Dungeoneering, a skill that came out in 2010, has seen very little updates done to it, and small fixes aside, the last proper one was in November of 2014, almost 10 years ago. Today, I would like to go over some of the fixes I would love to see, some new items and potential new content for Dungeoneering. First, we'll talk about small fixes I would love to see in the different parts of the skill. This isn't exactly new content, but would make current engineering more enjoyable. Adjust crawling ends. During Dungeoneering, you usually only find the Slayer monsters that you can kill, with the exception of crawling ends. These require level 5 Slayer and appear on basic monster rooms. While nothing massive, it doesn't make sense that they are the only Slayer monsters you can get without having the Slayer level to kill them, rendering some monster rooms impossible to skip if you haven't trained Slayer yet. Granted, they only appear in bonus rooms, but silly that you can't get past through because of them. Fix the Grave Creeper HP bar disappearing. Yeah, this is something very minor, but something that just senselessly annoys me. When the Grave Creeper borrows, his HP bar goes with him and just never comes back up again, save for rare exceptions. It's honestly not really needed, since he's really easy to kill with the OC, but it's still pretty annoying. Not being able to leave the boss room after the fight. Again, nothing major, but something that annoys me, especially when this persists even when out of combat. It's worse when you are in a boss room that you can't teleport away from. Jumping puzzle room being active after completion. After you complete a puzzle, you need to jump back, since there isn't an option on the pedestal to do so. To make matters worse, the ball that damages you is still active even after completing the puzzle. Having a teleport on the pedestal would actually be nice. The maze. On the vein of puzzles being completed and not deactivating, the maze puzzle should also have an option to teleport you to the start of the room, or at least make those yellow barriers just gone and disappear completely. Barrel room pathing. In the barrel room puzzle, the pathing can be tricky at times, where if you are on that side of the wall and click on the other, the pathing will ignore the barrels and it gets too close, and then you start moonwalking back to go all the way around. It's a minor thing, but again, should be looked at. Skilling room doors failing. If I'm already required to have the level, failing just gets annoying. I get that it's to encourage people to use food more, but it's too punishing while also being completely random due to the amount of damage it does. The same goes for the skilling challenges in puzzle rooms themselves. Honestly, I would just remove the fail state. Unskippable puzzle rooms. There are two ways of skipping puzzle rooms, with a lock melter or with the garage and elite outfit. Some puzzle rooms, however, cannot be skipped, because for you to do so, you need to attempt to pass the door at the end of the room, and since some puzzles have unreachable doors, they essentially become unskippable. A good solution here would be to have the skip option at the door at the beginning of the room, and also some puzzle rooms have hard-coded prevention skips even if you can reach the doors, although in my opinion every puzzle should actually be skippable. Very high level skilling doors. This is another thing that just low-key annoys me. In a way, I understand why they are there, but I don't think they are at all necessary. I understand that Jagex wants you to use potions to boost your levels so you can go through them or, complete these skilling puzzles. However, some are just impossible to open. It's not the first time I was in the single digits in terms of farming level, just for the game to tell me I needed a farming level of 104 to open the door. There is simply nothing I can do in Dungeoneering that can allow me to boost the skill by 100 levels. However, here's a solution that actually encompasses all of the three prior issues and just is a solution that works for all of them. When it comes to skilling puzzles or skilling doors, instead of requiring a level to pass the doors or to complete the puzzle, require a level to not fail. So any skilling door or puzzle is completable at any level you actually may have, but depending on the level requirements the door gives you and depending on your skill level, you'll have 100% chance of going through if you meet the level requirement, and this diminishes progressively until level 1. So you can still open the doors, you can still have the door failing mechanic, and you can still have the, door level requirements actually mattering, but now low levels can more easily enjoy the content while not removing a mechanic outright or locking people out of content. Essentially, it's the thieving approach, but I think it's the most appropriate, especially considering this skill is supposed to be open for everyone. These would not be applicable in the main path and should only work with bonus rooms. Blink. Yeah, look, I think Blink can be a fun boss fight if you make him somewhat slower, lower the damage he outputs, which is absurd by the way, make him have more consistent phases and make it clear to the players which side he is on or coming out of. To this day, I don't think many people actually know it will only come out of two sides, meaning you can actually just camp a corner and make the boss far more easier than people think it is. But again, primarily lowering the damage and making him slower so people have more time to react would make this boss fight far more enjoyable. Warmonger. This is another boss that does a bit too much damage, albeit not as much as Blink, but contrary to Blink, Kalgar has an immense HP pool. I get it, supposed to be the final boss of Dungeoneering, and thematically I understand what they were going for. But this was the first skill that had 120 content, so now imagine having to grind this boss every time you're close to that 120. It's simply not very fun, especially with the current transitions he actually does. I don't think it impacts damage anymore as he is not immune during these transitions, but it's still not a good boss fight to grind. Lowering its HP would help a lot to make the boss fight more enjoyable, and it would fall in line with other bosses in Demonheim. Next, I would love for some puzzle rooms to actually be sped up a little bit. Suspicious grooves are super slow to go through and to actually check. The obelisk is too slow to be engaging, but also you can't just AFK it, meaning it's in this weird middle ground. Just throw some more ghosts at it so, the players actually have something to do. I would also try and tie the charging of the obelisk to how many ghosts you actually kill, so the room goes from an auto scroller to a bit more skill expression, since the faster you are at killing, the faster you complete the room. The magical construct could just walk a little bit faster. The barrel room could also be sped up a bit. Currently it just takes ages to fill it and it's not very engaging gameplay. This is somewhat unrelated to Dungeoneering, as this is a problem most dungeons actually have, but making it so we can naturally increase the brightness would be fantastic. The problem is the lack of visibility. While most dungeons this isn't an issue since you don't actually spend that much time there, it sucks to have an entire skill be shrouded in darkness, where sometimes walls that are important for certain skills, and some doors as well, are just hard to see, which doesn't make the experience very enjoyable. Sure, I could just choose another skybox that has better visibility due to lighting, but the skill wasn't designed for them and it just looks weird at times, so allowing us to have the default skyboxes of the different places, but allowing us to actually mess with the brightness of them would be a really good thing. The binding system. I don't think it needs to be changed necessarily, although more binding slots are always welcomed, but more so the Jagex should have a mini tutorial over it, cause it's yet one of those things people will very likely not know about until a certain point, where then they will be kicking themselves for not knowing it existed sooner. There might be other things that need fixing, but this is as far as I can recall from my experience with Dungeoneering. Even if no more content is added, fixing these things would go a long way to make the skill far more enjoyable. This section is mostly going to focus on rewards for the already existing dungeon. One of the things Old School RuneScape does really well are the rewards from certain skilling activities that aid the player in doing said activities. For example, in Motherlode Mine you can train mining and get ores up to rune. You can also get gold nuggets, which are used to unlock things and purchase extra rewards at the mine itself, making it easier and more enjoyable to train mining there. You can unlock an higher level mine, make the hopper bigger, or unlock an hopper for the higher level mine. Forestry rewards made it better to and easier to just woodcut, thanks to, for example, the log basket, while also offering extra rewards to pursue with things related to woodcutting, such as the Twitcher's gloves, which give an extra chance of obtaining a bird's nest while woodcutting. This way, XP isn't the only incentive to do a certain activity in a skill, and that's sort of the approach that we're going to take. We'll also be taking into account the fact that the Dungeoneering shop already offers some rewards that make this skill better to train, such is the case with the faster home teleport animation. This will be a good opportunity for us to just allow players to earn rewards and make certain things in Dungeoneering less annoying to deal with. So most of our rewards are gonna be things that will make the dungeons themselves easier and more enjoyable to grind. First proposition I have, and it's one that was actually left in my comments: make the reset mechanic give tokens. Resetting floors is important for overall XP, but I think this is a mechanic that is often overlooked when you are first entering the skill. Allowing it to give tokens based on floor completions you do, before resetting could be a good way to bring attention to it, as well as increasing the amount of tokens the floors actually give. As we know right now, the best way to grind tokens are completely unrelated to actually diving into the dungeon. So say if you complete 10 floors before resetting, you get 1000 tokens. If you complete all 60, you get 60,000 tokens, and so on. The amount of tokens is obviously up for debate, but I just wanted to get this idea out there. The Prayer Breaker Scroll. The Prayer Breaker Scroll would be a scroll you can buy with tokens that reduces prayer effectiveness of bosses to 50%. You would still be encouraged to use the correct style and incur in a time loss if you didn't, but you wouldn't have to sit there sometimes for over a minute because you don't have the range set up to load. It's one of those things that would make the grind a bit better while not entirely defeating the point of the prayers themselves. Obviously, this would only be applicable to the Dungeoneering bosses. The Immunity Blocker. The Immunity Blocker is a reward you can purchase with your earned tokens, and it will make all immunity-based bosses be able to take damage during their immunity phases. There is a catch, however. Since the scroll is meant for those who are grinding the skill and have killed the bosses a couple of dozen times at least, said bosses during these phases will actually deal extra damage to the player. This ability is toggleable. The Eternal Pouch. The Eternal Pouch is a reward that creates a binding slot for a summoning pouch within Demonheim. You can already bind the potion, so this would make sense in gameplay terms. This would also make the summoning pouches actually part of the Dungeoneering gameplay. Rune of Zamorak. You can buy the ability to craft the Rune of Zamorak, a combo rune composed of Mind, Body and Chaos runes. This rune would be only craftable in Demonheim and would be used in the Storm of Zamorak spell. Storm of Zamorak. This is a spell ability that uses the newly created Zamorak runes. Most body and mind runes are used in spells that debilitate the opponent by lowering their attack and defense bonuses. This spell would deal no damage, but it would reduce the boss's attacks and defenses by 50%, again only usable in Demonheim. The Scroll of Farming. This scroll, when purchased, gives you the ability to instantly grow seeds when within Demonheim. Will of the Wisp. The Will of the Wisp ability allows you to, through the energy gathered from the wisps, reroll an item from any tier. The rerolled item will be substituted by another item of the same tier at the cost of the energy. This also works for tier 99 items to give people a chance to reroll them instead of continuously getting duplicates or items from sets they don't want. Portent of Bountiful Harvest. A new portent for divination. When activated, it will double the skilling resources you get from the resource nodes within Demonheim. These will last for 10 harvests before depleting. The Potion of Success. With the previous changes, the Potion of Success would allow you to have 100% success chance at any skilling doors or puzzles. In case the change above doesn't happen, this would just boost your skilling levels, except combat, by 100. This potion would be craftable through the combination of the Naturalist, Gatherer, Artisan and Survivalist potions to be a overload but for skilling potions. Depending on the tier of potions used, this Potion of Success will be a normal variant, a plus variant or a plus variant, which will have different levels and success rates. The normal has a 50% chance of success rate, the plus variant has 75%, the plus variant has 100%, or in terms of levels, it would boost by 50 levels, 75 levels, or 100 levels. Scroll of the Binding Necklace. When purchased, unlocks the ability to bind necklaces within Demonheim. The necklaces can be obtained from Slayer monsters present within Demonheim. While you can bind necklaces to your current setup, having a proper slot for them would encourage players to try and get their hands on one. The Edge of Night. When purchased, unlocks the ability to combine your hood with the Silk Hood's passive ability. Your main hood would retain the stats, but would gain the passive ability from the Silk Hood when equipped. Extra binding slot will give the ability to have a loadout with 6 items for the completed outfit loadout. This would also give extra binding slots in general to accommodate for other combat styles. The Creature Enchanter. The Creature Enchanter is a summoning pouch comprised of each type of summoning pouch found within Demonheim. This pouch is capable of summoning a very powerful familiar that has the combined abilities of all types of summoning familiars in Demonheim. On top of having these abilities, depending on the tier of pouches used to create this pouch, this familiar can have enhanced abilities such as enhanced damage, enhanced healing, extra space, and so on. The Mega Pouch. The Mega Pouch is a pouch you can craft within Demonheim that will keep a limited amount of base runes within it between floors. This pouch is an inventory item and gets emptied every time you leave the dungeons. Between them, however, you can accumulate runes as you go, so runes that went unused in a floor can be used for the next one. Necklace of Eternal Binding. This necklace would be a reward for rune crafting. It would allow the user to charge it with necklaces of binding. This necklace has a maximum charge of 1000 and can be recharged by feeding other necklaces of binding to it. Box of Spoils. The Box of Spoils is a consumable that gives you items that can be obtained throughout the game's resource dungeons. Things like logs, or ores, or monster drops would all be in here. Obviously, the less valuable they are, the more common is their drop rate. This box would also only roll supplies based on the resource dungeons you currently have unlocked, meaning you still need to train Dungeoneering to be able to access said resource dungeon before you are eligible to roll its rewards. This is more thinking about the 200 million XP players with leftover tokens. And these are some of the reward ideas I had to make Dungeoneering a bit more fun to train while having more rewards to aim for and bringing it up to speed. Some of these can be added to the diary rewards, such as the case of the Eternal Pouch, where the potion binding is a reward from the diaries, so the pouch binding slot could be as well. But overall, I wasn't too focused on where the rewards should come from, but rather just on the gameplay purpose they serve themselves. And I tried to give certain underutilized skills some more utilization by giving some stuff to them. And finally, the part of the video where I propose brand new Dungeoneering content. These will be mostly pieces of content that stem from ideas that would be nice to have, but I haven't necessarily thought about all of the details or about what they would entail more specifically. So these are just concepts with ideas that I would like to see being tried with Dungeoneering. The Skilling Dungeon. These would be a dungeon completely focused on skilling. While Dungeoneering is supposed to be for all players of all levels, the main way to progress it is through combat. Combat-only accounts have no problem training the skill, but skillers cannot train it alone. Therefore, a dungeon where the objective is to skill would be a nice addition, even if somewhat niche to a point. It would be a nice change of pace as well. There could still be monsters or bosses in here, but they would be more focused on the skilling parts of them. We already have skilling bosses in both Old School RuneScape and RuneScape 3, so mini bosses that can only be defeated through skilling would be a fun idea to try. Furthermore, this dungeon would have a speciality: skilling challenges. These challenges are optional but would reward extra tokens upon their completion. Token earning has been a big issue when it comes to this skill. The two most popular ways of earning tokens are through non-Dungeoneering methods, primarily the mini-boss farming in elite dungeons or the newly added archaeology collection farming, which don't involve Dungeoneering at all. These skilling challenges would put the focus more on the exploring the dungeon rather than blazing through everything as fast as you can. If Demonheim is going to be the hotspot for XP earning, then this dungeon should be the hotspot for token farming, all while still doing Dungeoneering. Some of the tasks here would include getting X amounts of a certain skilling resource, making a certain potion, and so on. These would be random and refresh every floor you complete. Larger dungeons would have more tasks or bigger tasks, either or is fine. Lastly, the amount of resources collected and processed could also enhance the amount of tokens you earn that floor. That way, even if it's not a task, going above and beyond when it comes to the exploration side of the dungeon would still reward you more than the people that do the bare minimum. Ultimately, this should satisfy people who enjoy skilling, while also solving the issue with token farming. The Intro Dungeon. While Dungeoneering isn't a hard skill to learn, I feel that it's also missing a more introductory components, such is the case of the necromancy mini quest that you have at the beginning or the archaeology tutorial. The intro dungeon would be a place dedicated for, the first Dungeoneering level, so it would be something along the lines of level 1 to level 20, to allow lower level players to more easily learn about Dungeoneering and its moving parts. In this dungeon we could have goals that the player needs to achieve, such as having to bind an item and load that setup with said item to teach them about the binding system, for example. Have them reset the few floors, 2 or 3 few floors that it has, so you can teach them about the reset mechanic. Have a level 1 Slayer monster drop a necklace to teach them that some monsters will drop certain gear and that you should look out for that. Because yes, I only now realized that Idimus actually drop a necklace. Yeah, there are necklaces in Demonheim. This dungeon would be situated in Lambridge, more focused on players stumbling upon it, and then you could direct them to the actual dungeon in Demonheim. The XP is more focused on completing such activities rather than going fast. Again, the goal is to serve as an introduction to Dungeoneering mechanics people can ease into, not to be an actual good training method. The dungeon. Since Necromancy was released, it was not incorporated into Dungeoneering. This could be a great opportunity to explore the junction between Necromancy and Dungeoneering. The dungeon would be in the city of and it would focus on Necromancy being the only combat style allowed in the dungeon. The focus here would be more towards the lower to mid levels, with the understanding that you are giving players a chance to play around with Necromancy without needing to invest into it in the main game. This could serve almost as a demo of what Necromancy could offer and how Necromancy works. Some of the mechanics in the dungeon could include upgrading your gear, crafting specific ritual scrolls, and just interact with activities that are important for the main skill in the game outside of the dungeon. You also have the opportunity to include certain more necromancy specific monsters and just test them out to see how people fare against them and how people enjoy their mechanics. It would be a great opportunity for people to check out how it feels to use necromancy in a Dungeoneering setting as well. The Gauntlet. The Gauntlet is a dungeon that is the Gauntlet from Old School RuneScape. Yeah, look, if you didn't know, the Gauntlet in Old School RuneScape was supposed to be a minigame version of Dungeoneering, and it somewhat failed at being that. The Gauntlet is actually more of a combat challenge. You have limited time to prepare for the boss by scavenging resources, and then you fight the boss to the death in order to obtain some loot for completing the dungeon. This idea I think would fit pretty well in RuneScape 3, a dungeon mostly focused on the combat challenges of using EOC, as well as trying to figure out the layouts and generation of the dungeon to try and be efficient with it. This would also allow for the PvM tryhards to enjoy a bit of a support skill and do progress in it while earning themselves some FTGP. You could also include a new PvM drop like Old School RuneScape has with the Bofa and the Crystal Armor, but it's frankly not needed. If the Demonheim dungeon is focused on XP and the Skilling dungeon is focused on tokens, this dungeon would actually be focused on GP. It wouldn't be so much about the exploration as it is about the fighting mechanics and smart use of your time. This would be mostly a high-level dungeon people could aim for rather than being accessible to everyone from the get-go. The Dungeon V2. This is a dungeon that is focused mostly in incorporating skills that are not present in Demonheim. Skills like archaeology or invention simply are not present in Dungeoneering at all. While archaeology and invention do present faint ties to Dungeoneering, they are simply not part of it. Invention as a lock melter, sure, and archaeology has recently added requirements for the completion of some mysteries, but nothing that actually involves doing these skills in the dungeons themselves. In terms of archaeology, I think it would be a great fit for some mini Dungeoneering boosts within Demonheim. Being able to uncover artifacts that can give a small boost to help in the floor can be a thing to be explored, as well as being able to have a bound artifact to grant the passive effect for every floor could honestly be an interesting play. In the same vein, you could have a mini version of Invention where your pool of perks is much smaller and actually acts as a passive. Could be an interesting thing to explore. This could just be included in the normal dungeon, however, I'm including them in a separate version to sort of create a Demonheim V2 to not overload the original dungeons, which are already pretty small and don't have a lot of space left. Here you could just add, new stuff from new skills, and while for now it's somewhat bare bones, you could build on top of it. A lot of the ideas here could also just be part of the dungeons, such as, the Skilling dungeon. Archaeology in the Skilling dungeon I think would work pretty fine, especially with these skilling challenges. The overall impact, especially of the rewards, would actually be felt in the rest of the dungeons. This is to say, the rewards you buy in the shops are actually shared in every dungeon. Every dungeon offers tokens and XP at different rates, with the exception of the gauntlet that would also offer GP for those who are able to complete it. The point here isn't to create dungeons that specialize in a very specific thing, but rather to give people a different look of what this skill can actually be, while, just allowing people to interact and play the skill a bit differently. These dungeons could also just have their own unique rewards, especially you can tie them to completing certain challenges or lore books or completing certain mysteries or whatever. There's a lot you can do with it, and there's a lot of these more meta concepts that you can explore when it comes to dungeoneering. Lastly, and an idea that is honestly, quite frankly, more out there, a dungeon that you can take your own stuff into. These dungeons would randomly generate an assortment of monsters and resources. You are limited in the amount of resources you can take out of the dungeon due to the limited space in your inventory. It would be an interesting look to allow Dungeoneering to offer dungeons that you can explore outside of Demonheim, meaning you can actually take your own items there and take advantage of the resources found within. Exploring this dungeon, be it through the skilling nodes or through fighting enemies, will have a rare chance of dropping part of a scroll when interacting with its resources. There would be 4 tiers of the dungeon that would depend on your Dungeoneering level to access. Imagine essentially resource dungeons but like randomly generated. The resources within would also require other skills to gather from, meaning if your Dungeoneering level is 99 but your woodcutting level is 30, you wouldn't be able to gather woodcutting resources that are high level and require high woodcutting level. In each dungeon, you get different enemies and resources depending on their tier. The choice to explore further or get out with the resources you gathered is yours. There's no time limit, but it's up to you if you want to maximize the amount of resources you get, or if you want to waste your time, leave some resources behind but potentially gather rarer resources. There is also part of a scroll that is spread throughout all the 4 tiers, meaning even if you are high level, you still kinda do need to do the lower level content and explore it. This scroll would be an hidden ability created by the smuggler that would allow you to smuggle damaged archaeology artifacts from your bank. Meaning, if you unlock this ability and you have damaged archaeology artifacts, rather than them just wasting space in your bank, you could smuggle them to a dungeon where you could still restore them at any archaeology bench, provided you have the resources to restore them, but they wouldn't occupy space in the bank due to being in this mysterious bank dungeon. This has been a pain point for a while, and a reward like this would actually be quite nice to have. If archaeology gives Dungeoneering rewards, I don't see why Dungeoneering couldn't give archaeology rewards, and the smuggler ability seems to be pretty mysterious and powerful. And that's pretty much it. I might elaborate about some of the proposed dungeons in the future, but for now I think they paint a good picture of what type of Dungeoneering content I would like to see in the game. My favorite part was obviously 100% the rewards. It was incredibly fun to come up with some of those, especially when the ideas are on the wackier side. I hope you enjoy, and honestly, even if Jagex doesn't have a lot of these, I really hope they at least give some of them a thought, as well as just please, like, implement the fucking fixes.